is there a thread across the 25 plus years that has been critical to you really moving really rapidly, especially at those 20 plus years at Intel?
When I'm true to myself in terms of what I'm really good at, two things happen. One is the success of my career accelerates and my happiness goes up. Getting really grounded in what I think are, my superpowers. And I think one of my superpowers is being able to translate some of the most complex technology on the planet into terms that customers and broader communities can understand, taking that and really applying it to content streams that will get consumed. I think when I'm close to that and I'm a practitioner in that space, that I reach a happy place for me, and that's rewarded in terms of career success.
Today, I'm speaking with Allyson Klein. She is formerly a VP of marketing at Micron and a general manager of data-centric marketing at Intel. And today, Allyson is a principal at Arena Marketing, a B2B marketing agency that serves the technology industry. Allyson talked with me about how when we keep on searching for what we are best at, it leads us to understand our one unique superpower. And for her, that superpower is her ability to both understand all of the relevant technical details of a technology that she's implementing, but more importantly, to be able to explain to the customer the value of that technology. She strongly believes anyone who considers themselves to be a technologist or a data expert needs to not only talk about features, but also to always connect data and tech with cost savings or revenue. So I'm really excited to share this episode with you. From Delve Deeper, this is Narrow Lanes. Allyson Klein, welcome to Narrow Lanes. I'm really excited to have you here with me today.
I'm so excited to be here and so excited to investigate the topics that we're going to talk about today.
I want to start with your career journey. I find that many career journeys are sometimes random and sometimes exactly what we wanted to happen. How did yours start?
I started in tech coming out of my MBA, and I had been a stockbroker of all things before that. So in finance, I started in sales because of that stockbroker background, but knew that, through my schooling that I wanted to get into marketing, worked my way into some marketing roles in driving technology initiatives at Intel. Ended up spending over 20 years at Intel in a really interesting career path, totally not linear. To your point, took on different roles in defining social media for the data center for the company, doing a lot of tech leadership marketing in various technologies from cloud computing to virtualization, and then later in my career into 5G and AI, and left the company in 2020 as the GM of data center edge computing and anything from IoT to comms networks to cloud environments. I went on to lead global communications and marketing for Micron. And then about a year ago, I realized that I wanted to start my own company and take everything that I've learned from that incredible career journey and apply it to clients and work across brands to drive technology marketing forward. And in doing so, established my own tech influencer platform. So I'm out writing for myself and engaging in podcasts and different technical publications, giving my point of view on what's happening in the data center to edge landscape.
What is one recurring theme that you've seen sort of bubble up? Or maybe it's something that you have realized lately, maybe several years ago, but is there a thread across the 25 plus years that you think has been critical to you really moving really rapidly, especially, at those 20 plus years at Intel?
I think that one of the things that comes back to me is when I'm true to myself in terms of what I'm really good at, two things happen. One is the success, however you want to define it, of my career accelerates and my happiness goes up. So getting really grounded in what I think are, my superpowers. And for me, I think one of my superpowers is being able to translate some of the most complex technology on the planet into terms that customers and broader communities can understand, and taking that and really applying it to content streams that will get consumed. I mean, I think that that's it in a nutshell. I think when I'm close to that and I'm a practitioner in that space, that I reach a happy place for me, and that's rewarded in terms of career success.
But that takes reflection, I think.
Oh, absolutely.
Not just, experience. But I like how you said true to yourself. That means you know what you're good at. And that means that you can be in your happy place. And your point about being able to translate complex technology systems, data systems into something that can be published and maybe understood in 5, 10, or 3 minutes.
Right.
How did this come about?
I think that, I am not an engineer by trade, but I was working at a company that is one of the most technical on the planet, right? The intricacies of microprocessor architecture and how microprocessors serve as the foundation for so many things from a standpoint of broader infrastructure as well as up the stack. It takes a knowledge of the computing domain to be able to market that. And that's applicable to systems change. It's applicable to software. It's applicable to what every IT department is seeking. I think that my natural curiosity and really wanting to understand things from a perspective of being a non-technologist. I mean, obviously you get technical when you work in an environment like that, but I'm a marketing background. I think that that's really helped me. And then I think that the other thing is just like having incredible mentors along the way, people who really took the time to educate me about technology from a standpoint of the depths of it as well as the breadth of what we were working on through that landscape. That's something that's really powerful. But then I think that, it's also just understanding what works and having a pragmatic attitude about, it's not achieving nirvana from a marketing standpoint. It's having impact in market and having a fast fail attitude that's really helped hone the skills, because I've had the luxury of trying things along the way that gave me key learnings about what works in market and what doesn't.
The point about curiosity totally resonates with me. As I think about my career, I think that this constant reflection and curiosity has given birth to certain principles or certain, let's call them undeniable truths or commandments, or honestly, things I'm unwilling to be uncompromising about. Is there something that stands out in your career journey that served you well at Intel, but also serves you well right now at Arena Marketing?
Yeah, there's two things. One is show up authentically, engage with people from a standpoint of wanting to do good work and not just wanting to get ahead. I think that my success was almost accidental. When I hear people talk about, how they had a strategy for career ascendance, I never did. I was just, I wanted to do good work. I wanted to challenge myself, and I wanted to work with really smart people. And what I've found over the last few years, as I've, left an environment at Intel that was, a place that I stayed a long time, is that my reputation followed me in terms of being somebody that folks wanted to work with, which is fantastic. And I think I earned that through just being that authentic person. At least that's what I hope is true. I think the second thing is, from a standpoint of curiosity, you talked about both. I had a conversation once with somebody that I worked with at Intel for a long time, who's now at Oracle. And one of the things she said was, if you have something that sparks your curiosity and it doesn't seem to be on your linear path for career ascendance, follow that curiosity, because you will end up growing in spaces that you didn't even expect you to grow in. And I think that that's very true. The move to Micron and really reaching out into corporate comms, policy comms, internal comms, things that I hadn't touched in previous roles. There was a curiosity of learning there. And I absolutely feel like I grew from those experiences in ways that I wouldn't had I stayed on that linear career path. So it's just opening yourself up to stretching and growing and maybe not always thinking about career growth as a linear path.
When I think about my own experience, I remember coding SAS, it's a statistical language, 25 years ago, and realizing that I was a pretty terrible coder, but also learning that I was quite good at identifying patterns in data. And I think, to your point, curiosity about coding took me to a place that I didn't expect to find myself at.
Right.
When you think about authenticity, when you think about really listening to yourself about what you can be good at so that you can be in a happy space, as you shared earlier, is there one area or skill where you found, again, both at Intel, Micron, at right now, at Arena Marketing, where you realize this is something that I'm really good at and I want to go deeper and I really want to own it and I want this to be mine?
I think it's that translation that we talked about earlier. It's understanding how to engage technologists in a way. And a lot of technologists, they're the smartest people on the planet in a lot of ways, but sometimes they're not comfortable with communicating what they're inventing. I think that I have an ability to work with them to really distill their messages, get them to be more comfortable in sharing the marvels that they're delivering in a way that folks can follow along their journey and engage with them. And I think that, in terms of tech arena, that's really come to the forefront with the content that I've been producing, especially the podcast series. I've had over 65 interviews in the first year.
Impressive.
With just like incredibly intelligent and, inspiring guests from across the tech domain that are doing incredible things in their companies. And I think that dialogue and guiding them through conversations is something that, is part and parcel to what I'm talking about. They show up and they're able to tell their stories in a way that I think even surprises them sometimes in terms of the impact that they're having. But then it goes further, just working with brands on, how do you take those stories and really bring them out so that they can differentiate, they can shine. I think that's the area that I'm most interested in pursuing at this point. And it's really understanding what I'm not. I'm absolutely not somebody that's going to go find patterns in data like you do. That's an opportunity where I see myself more on the messaging and content side, and knowing that great partnerships in those spaces are important to propelling my business forward.
When I think about that thing that you're really great at, which is helping people who are experts, who know exactly what these systems do and what data they produce and what value is therefore generated, enabling individuals with this skill set to actually shine when speaking in maybe podcasts, maybe it's in white papers, maybe it's on a stage. If I take that one level higher, I think this is a problem that many brands suffer from, which is that, I may be focusing on technical aspects of something that I'm producing, or I may be emphasizing a feature set that's very specific, or I may emphasize other unique characteristics of a product or service that I offer, but translating those technical specifications into something that the audience actually cares about and that generates value for the audience, as simple as that sounds, I think that's really difficult, and it's a masterclass level, that translation between the technical and actually value creation. What are you hearing?
It's funny. I think that it comes down to storytelling and understanding, it's just basic. So, going back to just Homer, you have an audience, right? You have an audience that wants to hear a story, and they expect story narrative delivery that has a beginning, middle, and end. And we've been all trained to listen to stories based on, archetype themes. You can break those down, but I think that demystifying technology and saying we're all human, first of all, and humans have some functional ability to take in stories based on what we've seen since we were children, right? I mean, there are ways that we can listen to things and things that make us tune in more And understanding that storytelling is integrated across, analytical, emotional, and gut level response to stories. So how do you deliver a story that touches on all three? Because if you look at brain scan studies, it'll show that when you touch on those various elements, different parts of the brain light up. And what you're trying to do is actually engage as much of the brain as possible so that your audience actually remembers what you've been telling them. I think that in working with brands, what I see is either a story is way too analytical. It is the nature of an engineering culture to be analytical, and I get that, but they're only lighting up a small portion of the brain. Or they're telling the story from a middle point. They're telling the how rather than backing up to the why. And that's an opportunity that is lost in terms of engaging their audience on a path that makes them care, right? So the why is why it's valuable to them.
So I'm really curious, is there a situation that comes to mind where you felt like your superpower of kind of explaining something that's complicated and technical to an audience that can actually appreciate the value that that solution creates? Were you able to apply that superpower, and where that needs to be a great storyteller and start at the end and work backwards, like you said, was maybe in some way transformational, or maybe you really created huge impact because you had a chance to be there at that time and apply yourself and create value?
I think that one of the things that Intel historically has done is defined broader industry stories that the bar of success was, are others in the industry using the same nomenclature and telling the story in the same way? And I think that one of the last things that I worked on at Intel was the creation of, with a team on the data-centric computing story, which dates back to 2019, 2020, but it really did set up a vision of data center to edge computing where data is the center of everything that you're trying to do. And it was the precursor to what we're seeing talked about today with AI, right? It's extracting value from data and doing so in a manner that you're taking every input wherever it resides in a broad computing landscape and getting analytics and insight as close as you can to where the data resides. That storyline was something that took a small team months and months to define. And I think that when it came out, it really set not only Intel's leadership more clearly with influencers in Wall Street and customers, and understanding the method to the madness of what Intel was doing at the time. And I don't think we need to discuss what's happened since then, but I think that it was a very good moment for Intel for clarity. But you can see that resonating even today in the way broader industry talks about the opportunity with data and data centricity and data gravity. And some of the things that came into that narrative are now part of the natural nomenclature of the industry around what computing platforms are trying to achieve. Those are the moments where you know that you hit it out of the park. When you see that your words become standard nomenclature across companies, that's when you know that you've done something really good to define clarity in a moment that required it. That would be an example. There are others, but I think that's something where it's like, okay, yeah, I had a meaningful impact here.
So would imagine that you had to put your foot down several times, or you had to really fight for something, or be obsessed about something, or be uncompromising. Is that fair, or that wasn't really needed?
Yeah, I think that anytime you're in a large corporation like that and you're trying to get onto a central message, one of the things that I see happen, especially when you have many, many executives at play, is that we're all human, right? Going back to that human nature, we all want to tell the story in our own way, right?
Yes.
And the only way that we can achieve breakthrough is when we use consistent language, consistent taxonomy to broad audiences. Any marketer or comms professional knows the challenge that alignment to a single message takes. I was talking to a CEO of a business recently. This was a different company, but trying to align to a single story. And we were talking about narrative development.
Hmm.
And I said, it's not the narrative. I can write you a narrative. It's getting your executives committed to using it. Because I can write the best narrative in the world, but if everybody's going to tell their own story, you shouldn't pay me.
And was there something specific that you had to employ, a tactic, a way of addressing the objective that broke through?
Yeah.
Was there something that just cut through and got them, all to believe that this is the way to proceed in terms of communication?
I think that there's a few things. One is having champions in the room
Okay.
that are going to be committed. The second is having a narrative in this case that allowed for some flexibility where folks wanted to go off book. So it's like, hey, yeah, you can tell that second level story any way you want, but at top level, this is what we're going to commit to saying. Then
Hmm.
your role will be to customize it around this particular pillar and take it wherever you want it to go. But what I want you to do is start with this story around data centricity. And I think that giving that flexibility and understanding the humanity in the room,
Yeah.
that everybody wants to differentiate themselves. Everyone wants to tell something that's going to be their mark, but giving them a framework to do it where we achieve both objectives, I think is the critical thing.
I mean, I'm almost hearing this bit of a tug of war between empathy for the people who are passionate about this technology and also this recognition that we need to serve the customer and we need to
Right.
ultimately deliver value. So there's an element of empathy, but I'm really curious about your point about champions.
Uh-huh.
Like, can you share an example of how you found those champions and how they then maybe served as pillars
Uh-huh.
for
Champions are hard
everyone
to
else?
find.
Yeah,
Champions
how
are
does
hard to
one do
find.
that?
Champions choose you in a lot of cases. But I think that, the one thing about working in very large environments, and it's something that I appreciate because I run my own company. It's much smaller than any of the companies that I've worked in prior. And so some of these things don't relate to my current environment. But in large
Hmm.
environments, understanding um, who has the political capital to help you achieve your objectives if you do not have it yourself is something that
Yes.
everybody should be asking, right? It's like, who in the room can actually make a decision to support it, even if they're not the decision maker, right? Who can
Hmm.
actually influence that decision? Um, then go talk to them
Yeah.
about what are their objectives? What are they trying to accomplish, and how can you support their objectives? And really understanding authentically what it is that matters to them, and then make a case of why they should invest some of their political capital in you. I think that's the way that you develop champions, is that authentic conversation. But a lot of it is based on building a reputation for yourself that you're actually going to deliver results. So I think it's it's a combination of those two things.
And I would imagine, I know I remember working for Bath and Body Works, smaller
Uh-huh.
organization than Intel,
But
about
still a
3
corporate.
billion,
Yeah.
still very corporate.
Uh-huh.
Absolutely. And what was hard for me back then was being authentic, but also recognizing that I work within a structure
Right.
and marrying the two. And what I'm hearing you say, and as I reflect on my own experience, is that going to someone who I would want to be a champion, and I'm thinking back to 2005 when I was at Bath and Body Works, if I went into that situation being truly my authentic self and being very clear about why am I here,
Uh-huh.
but also to your point, making clear that I'm really here to listen, not to talk.
Right.
That seems logical to me. Again, it also just seems hard.
Yeah. It is hard because I think that there's so much focus in the corporate arena on what is urgent rather
Hmm.
than what's important.
Yes.
And so, if you're having conversations with stakeholders, they're expecting you to come to talk about whatever is urgent when you may want to have a conversation to learn about what's important. Finding the ways to bridge between those things, That's why having a track record of delivery is so critical, right? If somebody sees that, hey, this person has always delivered upon their promises, and now they want to have a conversation about me, it's not a waste of my time to actually educate them, because there's going to be
Yes.
something that comes back, right? And so I think it's building that track record and then having the authentic dialogue that will get you to understand the playing field a little bit better and get you in a position that you can bridge to, hey, I know these are your business priorities. This is what I need to achieve, and this is how I think that this can work together. That can work in narrative, which we've been talking about, but it could work in anything, right? It can work in any place that there's connection points.
There's almost a different persona that we put on, different game face that we wear when we present to a room of 30 professionals, senior leaders, let's say in this context or in any other corporate contexts, versus these one-on-one conversations. I think they're both appropriate, and I think they seem both necessary. Is that fair?
Whenever you're in a big room of people and you're presenting an idea or a concept, you have no idea what happened in that room when you weren't there.
Right.
You don't know what other challenges they've got on their plates. I've walked into rooms to present what I think is the most important thing that I'm going to be doing for the year. And I know they're not listening to me at all because they've got another business challenge on their minds that is something that's very pressing. So how do you get that room back? How do you reconnect with them? Or how do you know that this is not your moment?
Right.
And you need to punt to a different moment so that you can actually re-engage with them when they're ready. A lot of it is just reading the room and doing the pre-meetings up front to know where the room is at so that you're going in prepared. That thing about, one person to 30 people, do those one person conversations before you get in front of the 30 people so that you know what you're walking into as best as you can. You don't always have perfect visibility, but doing that stuff is important.
It's easy to, I think, judge this and say, when I'm meeting someone one-on-one, being authentic with them, and also desperate to hear their point of view. And I'm using the word desperate on purpose because I think that one almost has to have this yearning to hear the other side because we sense things. We often don't hear things. But that may be perceived as politics, when in reality, it's just being human and having empathy. And it's okay to do that.
I think so. I mean, I think that if you put yourself in the other position, if somebody comes to you and says, hey, what's important to you? That's not a bad conversation to have, right? It's like, oh, wait, you're taking time out to talk to me about what's actually important to me rather than just telling me what you need.
Right.
That's unique. But I think that, it is political, and, all organizations have some sort of political nature about them.
That's the way it is.
It's also just complex, right? Anytime there's a complex organizational structure and multiple business objectives, you need to understand that landscape. And that is part and parcel to any corporate environment of just really understanding the changing landscape of what is the priority, what are on executives' minds, how does that translate to what I'm responsible for? How do I help the broader business?
What I'm hearing is that if my superpower is to bring a message that maybe is intrinsically very complex and technical to the market in a way that creates value for the audience, I do need to be able to focus on reading the scenario and whether in this context, we're obviously zooming into the champions and there are many other elements, but whether it's in a large setting or these one-on-one conversations with these champions that I have identified is almost a necessary, a must-have element of me getting the team to agree on that message. But I also wonder, is there a dark side to this process? Is there something that I need to give up?
Well, I think that it's a really good question. I think there are some pitfalls that people run into. One is you might lose track of the audience that you're actually talking to and want to write messages that please the champions more than please the customer. So that's
Interesting.
something that I don't know if you've seen this, but I think that companies can sometimes want to please their executives, or marketing teams want to please their executives in messages that resonate with the executives. They forget that the executives are the mouthpiece, not the. I mean, they're more than that,
They're
but
not the audience.
they're not the audience.
Yeah.
And I think that that's an important thing to always be checking. Is
Yeah.
I want the executive team that I'm working with to really love this message in order to tell it, but I don't want them to love it at the expense that it loses its resonance with the customer
Yeah.
and or whoever the audience might be. It could be investors, it could be media and analysts, whatever the primary objective is. But I think that that is a pitfall. And
Yeah.
I think that, the other pitfall is losing the authenticity to provide perspective and feedback on messages because you're trying to maintain that champion relationship. And that's an important thing when you're working with executives on narratives and comms delivery in this context, is you've got to have your ability to say, hey, the way this story is coming together doesn't hunt on this part, and this is why, and this is the feedback, and this is the data. This is the
Hmm.
data that we know about our customers to know that this message is not resonating in market. I've seen marketing teams fail when they've lost their ability through politics or fear or whatever to really give
Hmm.
feedback.
But what I'm hearing is that, and I believe in this, and I agree with you that as a marketer, we always have to be anchored to what is that audience that I'm serving, what are they going through, and then how do I fit in
Yeah.
into their story, and how do I make them a hero on their journey. And it really doesn't matter if it's a shoe company, an apparel company, a service company, or a microchip company, or an agency like Arena.
Right.
This need to be committed and uncompromising about who ultimately am I serving as a marketer. And to your point, it's not about what I think, what you think, what that champion thinks. It's about what that audience needs. I find that, and I've been doing marketing for 25 years, as simple as that sounds, it's so easy to get confused
Oh,
and
yeah.
sacrifice that.
And, it's funny. I've been working inside my own company on developing tools to help companies in this space. And, we're
Yeah.
moving from a publish and pray model of marketing where we'd put a message out and see if it resonated to so many
Hmm.
tools. AI has given us so many advantages in this space, but just pure data analytics and, building the right MarTech stacks of really understanding what's resonating and what's not. And I think the marketers heading into the next decade, marketers
Hmm.
who take advantage of these tools and really understand what they have at their disposal are going to be in such great positions to be valuable to the broader company, because it really is an insight into that customer and really understanding that customer from an intimate perspective of, what matters, what doesn't, what is a feature and what is a benefit. I think that that's going to be huge.
Let's talk about those two things. You said that, yes, it is important to understand how you are part of the solution for the specific problem in the mindset or the daily life of the consumer that you're serving. So I'm really curious to understand, how do I get at that, and how does Arena solve that question? And then your point about technology, I don't know what it means. So how does technology and data and AI help me either validate or refine, or that I am actually in fact solving a problem that I thought I'm solving? And it's really working out for me.
I think that we're moving from a landscape of an editorial being the driver of marketing to customer demands being the driver of marketing. And so instead of having a linear path of content pipeline, if you will, we're looking at an omni-channel approach to meeting the customer wherever it is, whether it's on a digital domain, at an event, in a customer meeting, in a post-sales support conversation. and having as much awareness as possible about how that customer has engaged the company and how we continue on a dialogue with them that is aware of everything else. I love experiencing this as a consumer, and I think I can talk about it from a consumer perspective really well, because gut level when it happens. When you've bought something and a company comes back to you for a support conversation and they know exactly how you purchased the product, where you've engaged the brand, why you've desired it, everything that you've fed to them, they feed back to you. And they do it in a way that is not creepy. I think that's the key. But you understand the customer and what they've told you is important to them, and you don't forget that. The other experience is when you're talking to, just imagine talking to an airline and you have typed in all of the information into their phone tree about what your problem is that you're calling about. Yet when you get somebody on the line, you have to repeat everything that you've just typed in. That is a way of not having customer intimacy and really failing the customer in terms of making them feel seen. I think that marketers that understand that these technology tools are available to them across this omni-channel landscape to be able to customize the narrative, if you want to think about it that way, and deliver something that is going to be meaningful and personalized to each customer. I think that that's where we're at. It's through analytics. It's through, a lot of data about customer personas. It's through setting up seamless ways that you're engaging the customer. So great MarTech tools, but it's absolutely possible today. And I think that that's where, when we're delivering messages into market, ensuring that those messages pull through into content streams that engage customers in this manner, I think is the future of where we're going. I don't think a lot of, I work in the B2B space, you work in the B2C space. I don't think a lot of B2B brands are hitting it out of the park here. I think B2C is definitely leading in this space, but I think that B2B will absolutely follow in the appropriate ways.
And is there an example from Arena where, and I know I'm pulling this from your LinkedIn, where a scrappy startup or a tech titan that you have worked with maybe was about to walk off the cliff. Maybe they thought that the go-to-market messaging, had to follow lane A, but really you pulled them back and you steered them towards messaging that was more authentic to who they are, and maybe more important to be heard by the target audience that they're going after.
Yeah, I think that there are many examples, and a lot of my clients don't let me talk about them. But
yes,
I'll give you an example of a scrappy startup that was on my podcast to give you an example of where I think their story really hunts. And it's a company called Lemurian Labs. They're making silicon accelerators for AI. And I think that they have a really impactful narrative around the democratization of AI access that I think is something that we're going to be talking about a lot in 2024. We're already talking about it now. But in AI, we've got companies like Microsoft, Google, Amazon, that have the world's data, that are building these massive AI clusters, training them on, every Google search that's ever happened in the world, for example, giving them insights to AI models that are blowing our minds. ChatGPT is one, but, more will follow. I think that one of the things that we want to do in 2024 is see pervasive use of AI and enterprises across all verticals being able to use that core capability and build out solutions that will tap AI in the same way that the large companies are doing. What we don't want to see is, a bifurcation, a further bifurcation of the haves and the have-nots within the AI era. But that requires some industry innovation to make that affordable for companies, and that's where Lemurian comes in. How do you change AI and the foundational math associated with AI to make it something that can be in the grasp of the masses? They have a very complex and technical way of doing that gets into logarithmic equations. And this is where taking a complex message and making it something resonate beyond the 6 people in the room that can understand logs. I think they have a great story. And they came on, Jay Dewani, who's the CEO, came on my podcast and told it. And I was just like bought in hook, line, and sinker that they have a vision that really could resonate in the marketplace. Just one example. But I think that there are many where you talk to a brand and, it could be that they have a very narrow market and they're using broad market marketing tactics and marketing funnel. It could be that they're messaging, what I said before, the how of how their technology works.
Yes.
And not why it's important and why they're differentiated from all the other folks that are delivering. Yeah. So it could be one of many issues. Getting to that where the gap is one of the jobs for me in engaging clients of like, hey, here's where maybe your problem is, and this is where we could probably add some value. That's like a center to every new client conversation.
And do you find that whether being inside of the business or as a consultant, this idea of being authentic to yourself, knowing what you're good at, and also finding a champion is still relevant? Do you still have to find a champion?
Absolutely. I mean, I think it's a different kind of champion, but yes, somebody that's going to believe that my business actually could offer something of value to their broader marketing goals. Champions are absolutely required. And I think that authenticity of saying, hey, I think I can help you with this. You're coming. I've had conversations with clients who have asked me to do things where I'm like, you know what? I can give you a referral of somebody else that's the best in the industry at that, but it's not necessarily something that I want to do with my business. Having the opportunity to have those conversations, I think, also adds authenticity to the fact that I actually care about delivering value and not just making money. So that I think that that's important as well.
Now, to close off, when you look at the last 25 plus years, and we spoke at the very beginning about really discovering what I'm good at and using curiosity as a way to discover what my superpowers are, and then leaning into those superpowers. What do you think would have happened to your career had you had this clarity sooner?
Oh, that's a great question. The first thing that came into my mind was I probably would have left corporate earlier. Because I think that
Why?
I know.
Why do you think so?
I think that I'm really good at working across storylines. And I think that lends itself into being a marketing consultant that's working across multiple brands. I do think that the time that I spend in corporate does give me the gravitas that's needed to be successful in the business that I'm in now. But I do think that I would have come to that conclusion more quickly had I known, true insight into what that superpower was. And I think that, probably there might have been, maybe 1 or 2 more stops on the career journey too, just to get that rounding of different brands and different storylines to take into the marketplace. That might have been another change that I would have made, but that's 2020 hindsight at this point.
And look, I recognize this is truly a tricky question, because there is this paradox here of we need these experiences to make it clear to us what we're good at, so we can lean into and be uncompromising about the things that we believe. And we just need to go through that process to realize certain things, and that's just the way life works.
Right.
But I often personally wish that I could go back and talk to myself in different situations, but I also know that would have been probably quite futile. It's just not how it works.
Exactly. I mean, I think that's the thing is like, yes, that could have been another interesting career journey, but I'm very grateful for the one that I had. And so it's up to this point. I don't think that, there is a right answer to that. You take what you get. It's that nonlinear nature that we talked about earlier, right?
Yeah.
Would there have been a different one? Sure. But I don't know if it would be better or not.
we never know that. I think that there are many multiverses. I'm a huge Marvel fan, Star Wars fan.
There you
I think there are many multiverses, and we can never know which one would have selected. Many narrow lanes that we could have followed. How about that?
Exactly.
Well, Allyson Klein, thank you so much for joining me today. Thank you for being vulnerable. Thank you for sharing your narrow lane and your journey. I really appreciate the time that you have spent with me.
Thank you so much. It was a delight.